Good morning and welcome to the new edition of Dr. Lamba's Awakening Call. The recent happenings in India are not something exceptional. We have seen them repeatedly in the last 70 years. I should say 70, but at least in the last 40 years. Nevertheless, the first murder of democracy was in 1969. And a decade before that as well, when Kerala government was punished and dismissed without any reason. 69, it was repeated ad nauseum, and it reached the heights when the premier, the chief minister of Haryana, Bhajanlal, defected with his whole cabinet from the opposition, or rather from the government side to the opposition, and came back. And that gave rise to a phenomena called Ayaram, Gayaram. Come here, go there. Money, alcohol, favoritism, they were the ruling of the day. But what happened in Maharashtra recently takes the cake. Can you believe that the pre-poll alliance was shattered? The partners parted, and one of the partners joined those parties whom they have been abusing for the last 30 years. Not only they joined hands, but they pulled the plank of their very platforms and went back on all the promises. Well, I wouldn't care that much. But what I find curious is that this is churning of the Indian society. In Indian society, they make ghee, clarified butter. And that clarified butter is made from pure homemade butter. What they do, they churn the yogurt and the cream comes on the top. Here in the Indian democracy, they churn and the vilest of the vile come on the top. It's not the goodness which is coming. And when I see the political situation in India, I find there the shades of Mahabharata. As a matter of fact, when any society becomes corrupt, the best people always gravitate to the bottom, and the worst flow to the top. And the vile is replaced by viler, and the viler is replaced by the vilest. And that's happening in India. I remember a short poem by one of the Hindi humorous poets, Sundar Sharma, in which he likens India to Mahabharata locale, where the people of India are like Draupadi. And when the king is a Kaurav, then she is disrobed, she is made naked to feel the sense of shame and helplessness. And if the king is a Pandava, she is lost in gambling as a commodity, implying nobody cares for the people. People are the Draupadi who will be made to stand naked to the gaze of all, the relations, the friends, the brothers, the sisters, the uncles, the aunts, and nary a voice to protect her. And these people striving for power have no concern for the people's desires and aspirations. They treat people as Draupadi, whether they are Kauravas or they are Pandavas. If they are Kauravas, they'll disrobe her, and if they're Pandavas, they'll play her, use her as a gambling piece. Technically, none of them. In Mahabharata, Bhisham, Dronacharya, Duryodhan, Yudhishthir, even Dhritarashtra followed the rules. When Draupadi was disrobed, these politicians, I mean Bhisham, Duryodhan, and the ilk, they were not breaking any rules. But ethically and morally, they were all wrong. As Bhisham, Duryodhan, and other courtiers who watched the sordid drama. And that is exactly what's happening in India. The people are being made to crave for even the necessities of life, and all their hopes and aspirations are crushed under the iron heels. What is missing today is what was missing in the time of the Mahabharata, the spirit of the rule, the spirit of the constitution, the principles on which the ruler rules, and the principles on which the Indian constitution was made. They are flouted with impunity, twisted beyond recognition, and then in steps the Supreme Court, again floating another rule, because the Supreme Court has no jurisdiction on the working of the House. I fail to understand why the Supreme Council, the Supreme Court of India, always steps in where it's not supposed to step in. The final authority of the House is the House itself. Ultimately, they would have met, and if the government was wrong, they could have thrown the government out. But by ordering a repo, or rather a vote of confidence under the supervision of Supreme Court, as if Supreme Court is the God Almighty to come and preside over the destiny. So everybody, whether it's a Prime Minister who gave a sanction earlier for the revocation of the President's rule, or the President who signed that proclamation revoking the earlier order imposing President rule, or the Home Minister, or the Governor, or the leaders of the BJP, or NCP, or Congress, or Shiv Sena, each one of them is guilty of misconduct, guilty of violating the Constitution, guilty of stepping beyond the means, and of being uncanny, uncivilized, uncultured behavior, anti-democratic behavior, including the Supreme Court judges who have shown that they are incapable of being judges. As I said, principally, they have twisted the rules, and none of them is wrong. Ethically and constitutionally, all are wrong. And if we keep the ethics out of the discussion for a while, we would find that each stakeholder in this political sordid drama is not breaking any rule. They are just twisting them out of the shape. Another shade of Mahabharata, apart from this breaking the rules, is the story of corruption and the stories of uncles and nephews. Mahabharata is one of the greatest stories that came out of India. And we see there how the blind King Dhritarashtra is favorably disposed to the nephews of Pandavas initially, but then he begins to sideline them so that his son Duryodhana succeeds on the throne. Here Shiv Sena for the last 30 years was siding with BJP for Hindutva, for Ram Mandir, and so that Uddhav could make his son the chief minister, he not only broke the association of 30 years, but went back on the solemn promise given to the people. So that is what breaks the ethical system. The diagnostic politics in India is very strong. And we have seen the share of Mahabharata in the warring uncles, nephews, and cousins in the recent years. Think of Bal and Raj Thackeray, Gopinath and Dhananjay Munde, K. Chandrasekhar Rao and Harish Rao, Abhay and Digvijay Chotala, Shivpal and Akhilesh Yadav. Of course, the last two uncles were not fully in charge of their respective parties, nor could they deny the nephews their limelight. But this thing keeps on, and in Jayalalitha's inheritors, All over, we find this family clannish attitude, infighting in the family and outside the family. In the meantime, the society is troubled. Can you believe Varanasi is the worst polluted city in the world today, with air quality being 991? The Prime Minister, whose constituency, the riding that is, has not bothered to and wink an eyelid to see what's happening now. He's more concerned how to rule Maharashtra through his proxies. I have the highest regard for Narendra Modi. He is one of the finest prime ministers India has. He has all the capabilities which Nehru and Indira combined had. But his predilection for the Hindutva, turning a blind eye when the lynching takes place, and then condemning them, his promotion of terror accused to the Defense Parliamentary Committee, his waking up the president and asking him up to sign the proclamation has the shake of Indira Gandhi when emergency was imposed. But Indira Gandhi also had a cabinet meeting. Don't forget that. Here there was no cabinet meeting, and the prime minister used his special powers to direct a request the president to revoke. And the president, dummy as Fakhruddin Ali Ahmad was, all the presidents till today, barring one, have been dummy. The only one who was strong enough was Dr. Rajendra Prasad, the first president, who returned the bill, Hindu Code bill, back to the parliament saying that he doesn't agree, annoying Nehru and thereby forfeiting his second term. But for him and for Abdul Kalam, the last but one president, we never had good presidents. These are the only two good, honest persons of integrity that we ever had. Rest all signed on the dotted line, whether it was Fakhruddin Ali Ahmad, whether it was Vivek Giri, whether it was Zail Singh, or whether it's the President Kovind. The governors act as the agents of the party in power, not as governors, but as couriers. And the politicians, you know it better. So when I say that Indian democracy, despite all the good work, despite being the largest democracy today, is a democracy that shames the name of democracy. This is a democracy where the vilest comes on the top. And when the vilest comes on the top, who suffers? Is the people of India suffer internally, and the reputation suffers outside. And then, when in such an atmosphere, stories are concocted, some is reality, but the enemies, the critics, would concoct further stories to defame India still further. And the shining star is slightly dimmed by the fog created by the fake stories. But then why give ammunition for the fake stories? You have one lynching and the whole world comes up saying that there is no tolerance in India and India has gone back. As a matter of fact, the very concept of secularism in India is wrong, where we say equal respect to all religion, it should be equal disregard to all religion. And then why can't we have the Republic of Plato's principles that no leader or his family shall benefit from the person when he is in power? That way Narendra Modi is unblemished. He is possibly the only prime minister who hasn't enabled the family to grow. who has kept the country's interest in mind. But here he suffers from a blemish, his softness towards his own party and his strong action, manipulative activities against the opposition. That is not acceptable. Ethics have been given a goodbye and thereby hangs a tail. I long ago read a novel by Anita Desai, Cry the Peacock. And that's what's happening. The people of India are today disillusioned and frustrated. But the shades of Mahabharata that are visible in the political scene of India have an indication that all is not well. Rather, much is not well, and India suffers from a fatal cancer, the cancer of corruption, the cancer of manipulation, the cancer of total disregard to all ethics and rules. Where shall this country go? Think about it.